under his breath. The air grew colder, and from the stump of the felled tree, a figure began to emerge. It was a familiar-looking woman to Jidenna, her form ethereal yet commanding, her swollen belly unmistakable. She was pregnant, and her gaze was fixed on the beggar with an intensity that made Jidenna take an instinctive step back. "Your incantations are worthless here," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. It was a voice heavy with sorrow and rage. "How does it feel knowing you have the blood of so many women on your hands?" The beggar's lips moved soundlessly, his eyes wide with terror. Jidenna, bewildered, turned to the spirit. The woman's gaze softened briefly as she looked at Jidenna. "I am free now, but not entirely. The banjo you carry has lost its power. It served its purpose, but I cannot move on until he confesses." She pointed a spectral finger at the beggar. Jidenna's brow furrowed. "Confesses? To what? What is she talking about?" he demanded, looking down at the beggar, who shook his head vehemently. "I know nothing of this," the beggar croaked, his voice hoarse. The spirit's expression darkened, and she took a step closer, her translucent feet hovering just above the ground. "Enough lies. Shall I recount your deeds?" Her tone was sharp, and the beggar flinched as though struck. 1972, she began, her words like a gavel falling in a courtroom. "A business tycoon wins the government contract of a lifetime, but his wife dies mysteriously soon after. 1976, a politician secures the governorship of Ebonyi State, and his wife is kidnapped and killed. 1989, a son becomes wealthy beyond imagination after his mother's sudden and tragic death. Shall I go on? 2011, a musician rises to fame following the inexplicable death of his fiancée. You were there each time, weren't you?" The beggar's breathing quickened, but he remained silent. "This time is different," the spirit continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "This time I was pregnant when you and Ebenezer decided to end my life. You took not only my life, but that of my unborn child." Her voice broke, and she paused to collect herself. "You used my essence to bless that banjo. Every string, every note bore the weight of my suffering. But my baby, she gave me strength. Her energy sustained me until I could manipulate the banjo myself." Jidenna was still confused. "I am the woman in your dreams," she cried as if she had read Jidenna's mind. "The woman in the picture in Ebenezer's room at the hospital." She frowned her face. "Ebenezer, the string king." Jidenna's mouth was dry. He tried to piece together the fragments of her story, but it felt like grasping at smoke. "Ebenezer?" he asked hesitantly. "What does he have to do with this?" The spirit's expression hardened again. "Ebenezer was my lover, and then my husband. He was a musician, struggling to find his place. I believed in him, supported him, and made contacts to help him succeed. But he grew impatient. He sought shortcuts, turned to diabolical means." Her gaze shifted back to the beggar. "You were his answer, the spiritualist who promised success in exchange for blood." She spat the words like venom. The beggar began to sob, his shoulders shaking violently. It wasn't just me," he stammered. The spirit ignored him. "Ebenezer came to me one night, desperate, and asked him if I loved him. Of course I loved him. He also asked me if I would do anything to ensure his success. Of course I would. I told him yes. He knew I was pregnant. He begged me to sacrifice our child for his success. He said that was the only way, and if I loved him, I would do it. He said we could have other children, that this was the only way. I refused, of course." Her voice softened momentarily, as if reliving the heartbreak of that night. "He wouldn't let it go. Day after day he begged, pleaded, and then he changed. His love turned to hate. One day he struck me, hard." Her voice cracked and she looked away as though the memory itself burned her. "I fell unconscious, but I could hear everything. He thought I was dead, and he called you." Her finger jabbed toward the beggar like a dagger. "You told him I was enough," she continued, her voice growing sharper, each word laced with pain. "You told him that my life, my essence, would suffice. Together, you performed the ritual. You planted this tree to seal my spirit, but you didn't know that my child, my baby, was still alive within me. Her life force sustained me, even as my soul was bound to this tree. As the tree grew, I grew as well, till I could draw energy from it instead. If you have come this far, it means you are enjoying the story. Please click the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, then hit the like button for more stories. New stories every week. My life, my soul, was bound to that tree. My child's spirit clung to me, sustaining me even as I suffered unimaginable agony. Do you know what it feels like to be trapped? To feel every cut, every chisel as they fashioned that banjo? It was as though my flesh was being carved, my soul shredded with each symbol carved into the wood. Her voice grew darker and colder. But then, something changed. As Ebenezer's music brought joy to others, my pain turned to power. The applause, the admiration, it fed me, it gave me strength, and I vowed to exact my revenge on both of you. The beggar looked up now, his face streaked with tears. Please, forgive me, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Have I not suffered enough? The spirit's laughter was bitter, hollow. Forgiveness? She repeated, her tone dripping with contempt. After decades of suffering, after lives ruined, you don't deserve forgiveness, but you will confess, here and now. The air around them felt heavy, thick with the tension of the past and the weight of unspoken truths. The moon hung low, its pale light filtering through the twisted branches of the fallen tree that had witnessed it all. The beggar stood trembling before the spirit woman, his hands raised in an almost defensive gesture, as though trying to ward off her fury. His eyes, wild with fear, darted between her and Jidenna, who was now nursing a bleeding hand, clutching it in pain. It's not my fault, he muttered, his voice weak, almost pleading. He glanced towards the ground, unable to meet the spirit's gaze. I only offered Ebenezer the choice, his mother, his friend, or his siblings. He chose the unborn child. What was I supposed to do? I had no idea you were even pregnant until he mentioned it. I am only a messenger. He made the choice. The spirit woman's chest heaved with rage as the truth slammed into her like a thunderclap. She staggered back, her hands pressed to her chest as her body trembled. She could hardly believe her ears. The beggar's confession shattered the last remnants of hope she had clung to. Her heart, already broken, splintered further. She let out a soft sob, a sound so fragile it might have been the wind. Her tears, once dry, flowed freely now as her body swayed with the grief that engulfed her. Jidenna winced in pain as his bleeding hand dripped onto the ground. He watched helplessly as the spirit crumbled before them, her rage slowly morphing into deep, unbearable sorrow. Wrap your hand with the leaves, she said, her voice hoarse. Her gaze flickered to the twisted branches of the tree. They'll heal you. But the music, you can never play again. Jidenna nodded mutely, his fingers already reaching for the thick, dark leaves from the tree's branches. As he wrapped his hand, the burning sting of his wounds dulled, but a sense of finality settled over him. The music, once so pure, would be lost to him forever. He pressed the leaves tighter against his palm. The sound of the spirit woman's scream shattered the night. Ebenezer! She howled, her voice raw with rage. I will kill him! Her form blurred, faster. Before Jidenna could react, she had disappeared into the night. Jidenna stared after her, his heart heavy with dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Where is she going? He asked, his voice shaky as he wiped sweat from his brow, his hand still wrapped in the leaves. The beggar, standing a few feet away, gave a dry chuckle, though there was no amusement in it. She's going to Ebenezer, he said simply, shrugging as though it were of little consequence. To end him. Jidenna's brow furrowed. But why aren't you worried? She's going to kill him. The beggar's lips curled into a bitter smile. I'm just the messenger, he said, his voice tinged with resignation. She tormented me for years, turned me into this, a beggar, cursed me with a smell that never goes away. I've waited for this day, waited to be free, and now, thanks to you, I am. Jidenna couldn't comprehend the beggar's detachment. How could someone be so indifferent to the possibility of death? But before he could question him further, the ground beneath their feet rumbled. Without warning, a lion leapt from the shadows, its jaws snapping shut around the beggar's throat with a terrifying finality. The beggar's scream echoed through the forest, but it was cut off as the lion dragged him away. The rest of the men appeared from the shadows, grabbing Jidenna roughly, pulling him away from the scene. "Come on, we have to go," one of them barked, his grip firm on Jidenna's arm. They didn't look back as they made their way through the dense forest, their footsteps quick and urgent. Jidenna stumbled, his heart pounding in his chest and his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion. What was happening? What was the spirit woman's plan? And why did the beggar seem so calm? Eventually they reached the road, the familiar hum of civilization beckoning them forward. But Jidenna couldn't shake the image of the beggar's bloodied face as the lion tore into him. Months passed, and Jidenna's hand had slowly begun to heal. The scarring was minimal, but the loss of his musical abilities was something he could never ignore. It was a constant reminder of his past, of his mistakes. As he sat in his small flat, the morning papers scattered across the table, the headlines screamed at him in bold letters: Ebenezer, the String King, found dead, apparent suicide. His heart sank as he read the stories, the details of Ebenezer's death, the accusations, and the whispers of his involvement in dark rituals. Jidenna folded the paper slowly, setting it aside. The past was catching up with him, and there was nothing he could do to undo the damage. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. He needed to see her, to face the woman he loved, the woman he had failed. He had to make things right. So he drove to Kaduna. The town of Kaduna had changed little since he left. The streets were busier now, the air filled with the hum of a city slowly growing into its own. But when Jidenna arrived at his in-laws' house, everything felt oddly familiar. The family was gathered, seated on a mat in the small courtyard, sharing a meal. As he stepped out of his car, his heart began to race. His eyes found her almost immediately. She sat across from the others, her hands resting on her swollen belly. She was heavy with child, nearly full term, almost the same time she had left him. She looked up at him, her face a mix of surprise and something else. Pain, perhaps. She started to rise, but her father, a tall, imposing figure, gestured for her to sit. "No, sit," he said firmly, his voice rich with authority. "Let him speak." The other family members quietly stood, one by one, and left them in silence. Jidenna stepped forward, his throat tight with emotion. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice unsteady. "I know I can never undo the past. I broke the banjo. I made mistakes. I was possessed by fame, by greed. I didn't think about the consequences. I wasn't the man you fell in love with at that point." His voice cracked, but he pressed on. "I can't bring our daughter back, I know that. But I promise you this. I will be the best father I can be to our child. I will make up for the mistakes I made." As he spoke, her expression softened, but she didn't say a word. Then, just as his words seemed to hang in the air, she gasped. Her face twisted in pain, and with a sudden rush, water spilled from beneath her, splashing onto the ground. Her father sprang to his feet, his expression one of alarm. "She's going into labor!" he shouted. Jidenna's heart pounded in his chest as he rushed to her side, helping her into his car. The drive to the hospital was a blur, filled with frantic gestures and silent prayers. Hours later, their baby boy was born, crying fiercely in the sterile, bright hospital room. They named him Jidenna, after the man who had learned the hard way the true meaning of family, sacrifice, and redemption. As they sat together in the quiet aftermath, the sun setting outside, Jidenna looked down at his son, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. Thank you so much for sticking to the story till the end. Please subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell so that you get notified when we upload new videos. A new video will be uploaded every week.